Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. I want to welcome Secretary Donovan and continue to wish you the very best in your job, and appreciate the willingness to take this difficult leadership position at this point in history. And let me say, before I comment on the current plan, that it is important that we not totally forget history. The fact of the matter is that, while to some it may have seemed like the prior administration was completely ignoring the housing problem, I think it would come to a surprise to those that work for you at FHA who are working on Hope for Homeowners, which was a well-intended program, has not had the success we hope it would have. But if we simply ignore the fact that sincere and efforts were made by your predecessors to deal with this problem, we will not learn the lessons of why some of those programs didn't work as successfully as everyone had hoped at the time that they would work. So I think it's terribly unfair to simply say the problem was ignored, people didn't care about poor people losing their homes. I just don't think that's accurate or the case. So I think as you look forward to implementation of this program, looking to Hope for Homeowners and some of the issues that arose in that program that created problems in participation by private servicers are some of the very issues that I think we need to deal with in the plan that is being currently suggested. I was pleased with the President's initiative last week. I think it's very important that we begin to deal with this very, very serious problem that's afflicting so many Americans. And I believe we can help deserving families stay in their homes by curbing unnecessary foreclosures, and in doing so, help to preserve communities and put our housing market on a pathway to recovery. The President has laid out the groundwork for the plan, which includes three main components: a refinancing option for qualified homeowners whose loans are currently owned or guaranteed by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, a $75 billion interagency loan modification strategy, and an additional $200 billion in funding commitments to the housing GSEs. I applaud the administration for taking aggressive steps to tackle this crisis, and I also want to be sure that as we go forward, we get some answers to some of the details. I question whether we'll be more effective than the current programs in preserving home ownership. And that's at the very core of why I say it isn't just enough to say the prior administration tried nothing. Some things were tried not successfully, and we need to learn those lessons rather than just simply ignore that the effort was made. One of the major stumbling blocks to the success of the current preservation programs has been the lack of participation by servicers of privately securitized mortgages. These mortgages, which were originated without a guarantee from the government-sponsored enterprises, account for more than one-half of the foreclosure starts, despite the fact that they only are about 15% of all outstanding mortgages. Servicers of these securitized mortgages make a critical decision of what to do when a mortgage becomes delinquent by choosing to pursue foreclosure or a modification of the mortgage. Existing research suggests that these servicers opt for foreclosure much more often than private lenders that service their own mortgages. While Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and FHA and private lenders are actively and aggressively pursuing mortgage modifications, servicers of securitized loans are still lagging. Two primary factors are driving mortgage servicers' reluctance to modify loans when modifications would make economic sense. One is that servicers are not compensated for loan modifications, and secondly are the legal constraints and the potential for litigation that dissuade many servicers from pursuing modification. I was glad to see that President Obama's plan addresses one part of this problem by providing monetary compensation to the servicers, but it neglects to address the legal constraints hindering the servicers' participation. Without this critical second element, I do not believe the private marketplace will be any more willing to pursue modification over foreclosures than they have in the past. Chairman and I co-sponsored an amendment to the stimulus bill which covered both of these items, and I commend to you a look at that amendment, which passed but ultimately was not part of the final bill, which I think would have dealt with both aspects of the problem, not just the compensation but also the legal safe harbor provided to the servicers. I have concerns about the federal government's becoming a guarantor of loan modifications enacted under this program. Although the housing market may be stabilizing in some areas, there are still places around the country, including cities in Florida, where home prices are expected to decline further. According to the Obama administration's own projections, 40% of loan modifications through this program are expected to redefault. We need to ensure that the federal government is using taxpayer dollar wisely and that we're working to really solve problems, not just delay them. One major factor for accelerating defaults is that consumers are saddled with debt beyond their homes, including credit card debt, auto loans, medical bills. The fact that continuing unemployment is a part of our daily landscape, is something that cannot be ignored as an added element of what is happening here. In any event, I want to thank you for the job you've undertaken. I want to thank you for the initiative that I hope we can see all of the details of, and I want to work with you because this is a plan that America needs to succeed. We need for it to work. So I hope we'll continue to develop a plan in consultation with the Congress that can not only begin to stave off more foreclosures and decline in values, but also begin to really see a reemergence of the housing sector, which is a vital part of an economic recovery. Thank you, Secretary, and I look forward to hearing your testimony.